everybody in the world, I believe, wants to help people, or at least most people do. Most people are nice people. They want to help people, and they think you got to do something huge to make a difference. In my opinion, I'm like, I think it's the small things that actually make a difference. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Eat, Sleep, and Invest. I'm your host, Brian Driscoll, and today we're going to be talking about something I've been working on for a long time. It's called the goodness game. So first, I'll tell you what it's about in a bit. It's a game I've been coming up with, but I want to give you some backstory first. I've talked a little bit about this in the past, but I'm going to give you the full story here, and we're going to be pushing it out for everybody here in like a couple weeks. So it all started back in like 1998. Like, I don't know, what's that, 25 years ago, something like that. I was always a troublemaker. For the people that know me personally, you guys, I mean, you can tell I used to get into trouble. I'm kind of like, it's just how I roll, right? So I don't really play by the rules. So back when I was 18 years old, I was like 17, 18 years old. I got pissed at my parents and I decided to run away. So what I did was I went down to the Greyhound station here in Pittsburgh. I literally got the next bus leaving. So it's like, whatever the next bus leaving is, that's what I'm taking. Took it. I don't know what it cost. It was like $80 or something, maybe $100. And I took it and it went to Orlando. Next bus was going to Orlando, right? So I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just pissed and I kind of left. So anyways, long story short, I'm on there. If anybody's ridden the Greyhound, especially back then, like you learn some things like don't sit next to the bathroom and you're constantly taking connections. It's not a straight flight. In addition, if I'm running from the law, that's definitely how I would be doing it. Like, it's like you just get on a bus. It's not like, well, at least it wasn't then. They weren't really checking ID, stuff like that. What happened was I take this Greyhound bus to Orlando. I got like maybe $250, a duffel bag with a little bit of clothes and no idea what I'm doing. 1998, there's no Uber, didn't have a cell phone. So in the last stretch, it's probably like, I don't know, 11 o'clock at night. We're getting to the last stretch and I'm like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm talking to this couple. I'm like, okay, they're like, hey, what are you doing after this? I'm like, I don't know. I got to find a place to stay. They took me to their house and I remember standing over the table and using the yellow pages, which if you're young, you may not know what they are. They're humongous book, like just with phone numbers of businesses. But we called around and I found a hotel, right? It was $25 a night. It was actually a motel, not a hotel. So I ended up staying there and didn't have any idea what I'm doing. So I got a couple $100, no idea what I'm doing. I ended up paying rent for the room for the night, eating like a Wendy's burger back when they used to be like 69 cents. And that was it. No plan, no objective. I started running out of money. I went to a Publix, tried to get a job there, not realizing it's really hard to get a job when you don't have an address and we don't have a phone number. They say, and you also don't get paid for a couple weeks. So I ended up running out of money, ended up hooking up with a job labor pool where you just go get paid by the day, but it still didn't make it. So one night I was walking. I didn't have anywhere to stay because I ran out of money. My idea was I'm walking to the Greyhound station to sleep for the night and try to figure things out. Okay. So not like my highest moment. I'm walking to the Greyhound station and it was, I don't know the area, but it was a little suspect. And I'm just walking and some lady pulls up beside me on the side of the road and says, hey, it doesn't look like you belong here. And started asking me like, where are you going? It was her and her son. They had a black Geo Tracker. One of the ones, if you remember, they had like the rag tops. So anyway, so she asked me like where I'm going. I'm telling her, hey, I'm going to the Greyhound station. And she picked me up, took me back to her house and let me stay there, right? For a couple of days, helped me get on my feet. So first, at the time, I didn't really think there was anything weird about that. Looking back, I'm like, who freaking does that? So long story short, we go back to her house. It was weird too. It's her son. I don't remember her name. I think her son's name was John and her husband. They take me back. They give me food. They let me sleep there. The only thing I can really remember is they had a horse. It was like an hour away from Orlando. They had a horse, a white fence, and they had this cat that was like 2 feet tall, looked like a cheetah. So anyways, I'm staying there a couple days and they ended up helping me get a job. Her husband worked, I think it was the Marriott. He worked at like that chain. So they helped me get a job there in room service. So I go there, do the interview. They put me up. I get the job. I start going to training. And what they did was when I was going through training, they paid a couple $100 for me to stay. It was like a Comfort Inn Suites or something, but they spotted me a couple $100. to stay in a hotel until I got my first paycheck. And that was to pay them back. At the same time, there was a hurricane coming into Florida. My uncle lived down in Pompano Beach, like by Fort Lauderdale. He was coincidentally coming up to Orlando to drop his wife off in a hotel, and then he was going back down to board everything up. So he grabbed me, and we went back down, and I helped him out. So I chose to go back down and help him out, and I bailed on these people that helped me out. Like I said, not proud of it. I was 18 years old. But regardless, they lent me $300. I haven't paid them back. Here's the kicker. I come back to Pittsburgh like maybe a month or so later, and life just goes back to normal. I get a job. I'm working, things like that. Getting into trouble, whatever, like just drinking stuff and everything. So I'm back in Pittsburgh. I forget about this lady. I have a job. I could pay her back, and it just time goes by. So it's now 2024. I don't know who this lady is. I still owe her $300, and I have no way to pay her back now. So that's kind of like the background on like what sparked how I am. Some lady did something small, well, maybe medium. It wasn't super small. She took me back to her place, but she did something that was a one-time act that made a huge difference in my life, right? Fast forward to, I believe it was around 2009. I've always wanted to pay her back, and I don't know how. And I saw the movie Pay It Forward. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to pay it forward. Basically, that is, instead of paying someone back that you owe money to, pay it to the next person and hope that the kindness keeps going, or the positive energy, right? So that was the only thing that I could do, because what else am I going to do? I don't know who she is. So that started with me. And normally I don't talk about this stuff, which I'll get to in a minute why also. But that put in me, ever since then, I've just tried to pay it forward, mainly because I can't pay her back. Like that was initially what started it, right? So in 2009, I had an idea. I'm like, I wonder if small things really can make a difference, right? Like, can you do something small? Because everybody in the world, I believe, wants to help people, or at least most people do. Most people are nice people. They want to help people, and they think it's something, you got to do something huge to make a difference. In my opinion, I'm like, I think it's the small things that actually make a difference, right? So what I did was I did a social experiment. I went onto Craigslist, and I put a post up saying, hey, I'll come to your city. I picked a random city. It happened to be Chicago. I said, hey, I'll come to your city, help you out with some stuff. I don't want anything in return. I just want you to pay it forward. And I just put it up. I wanted to see what happened. I don't know where the idea came from. I remember it was like 11 o'clock at night or something, and I'm sitting in bed, like brain just racing. So I'm like, okay, this is a cool idea. Let's just do it and see what happens. I posted up, and I expected to get like a whole bunch of wacky stuff coming back. And I did. Some of the people were like, just totally weird stuff. But then I had a bunch of people also saying, hey, this is cool. I can help you out if you need help when you're here. And then I had like 5 people that truly needed help. And it was like small stuff. One dude needed a ride to pick up his car. He just got a new car. And like I said, Uber wasn't around. He just needed a ride to pick it up. He just bought a car. One lady needed help just tearing down a swing set. One dude needed help for a couple hours, just help he was gutting a bathroom. He just needed help taking the debris from the bathroom down 2 flights of steps and putting it in the dumpster. One guy ran a homeless shelter, and they just needed clothes. And then one guy, the only one that cost money was one guy, his car battery was dead and needed a car battery. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to do this. I want to see what happens. This is 2009. So I'm like, I don't know, 27, 28, something like that. I hop in my car from Pittsburgh, drive to Chicago, drove straight through. I left on a Friday, came back on a Sunday. So it was a quick trip. Went up there. I documented on this old school, like little camcorder, and recorded it, came back, and I'm like, okay, that was cool. I think I got more benefit from going than like helping the people. It was cool, but that's a whole different story. So what happened was I came back, I documented it just through pictures and like this little camcorder. I'm like, okay, what am I going to do with this? So what I did was I hopped on, it was like Windows Movie Maker, hopped on, compiled it together in like a chronological story and stuck it on YouTube. I'm like, I just want to see what happens. I want to see if this can inspire other people. I did it anonymously. So I did not put my name behind it. I was not in the pictures, things like that. So I wanted to see what would happen. And one of the reasons I don't want to be the spotlight of things like that. One of the reasons is I want people to be able to see themselves making small acts and like doing things, right? If that makes sense. So anyway, so I started getting comments back and was like, hey, this is cool, whatever. And then I started having media hit me up. They're like, hey, you know what? This is really cool. We want to do a story. So I had big media outlets, like national outlets hitting me up. And And I agreed as long as it was contingent on, it was anonymous, right? So for the reason I just told you, most of them said, hey, you know what? Our editors aren't going to let us do a story if there's not a person behind it. I'm like, okay, that's cool. But one of them, her name was Gabrielle. She said, yeah, my editors are cool doing this if we don't have a story. We'll just make a pseudonym. So I'm like, okay, cool. They wrote a story on it and it went viral. So it got a lot of attention. Also, I'm in here in Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, in addition, wrote a story. You can see the stories. I put them on the website, goodnessgame.com, but they put stories on there. I was looking at it like this. One act, me going to Chicago and making a video, that's the one act, was able to trigger like a compound effect. And in this case, it got media attention so other people could see the story. And my hopes are that spread positive impact or positive energy out in the world, right? So kind of like I proved the model. Like in business, it's like if I want to do marketing or something, it's like, okay, I'm going to test things. And then once one works, I proved it. Now we can try to see if we can scale it. So the model was pretty sound, except for I found doing things anonymously fizzle out. No one wants to, like, you can't market something if there's not a brand or a person behind it. So, and at the same time, back then, I didn't make any money to market things. And one of my buddies told me, he's like, hey, you know what? It's great things you're trying to do. He says, you can't really make a difference if you can't help yourself. And he told me, it was probably just like a one-off conversation, but it stuck with me. He's like, if you want to make a difference, go out and make a bunch of money, then come back to it because you can self-fund and you don't have to rely on other people. So that's what I did, right? Went out, started a business. I owned motivated leads. I owned real estate. And now I circled back. So, and normally, like I said, I don't usually talk about this kind of stuff, but I want to share this with you guys because I think it's important. And I came up with a goodness game that we're going to get to here in a second. The whole purpose is to inspire others to do good things, right? Okay, so I'm going to give you a story of a small act that somebody did that made a difference in my life. So back in, I think it was 2011, my wife, she's from Ohio. She's from Canton, Ohio. And she moved to Pittsburgh. She was cutting hair and being a waitress. And she was just like trying to make ends meet, right? And every month she came up, it was like $100 behind. So she talked to one of her mom's friends. Her name's Minnie. And she talked to her and she's like, you know, I just feel like I feel like Pittsburgh's where I should be, but I'm always short and I'm going to have to move back home because I can't afford to be here. I'm short every single month. Her friend Minnie gave her $100, said, hey, I'm going to give you this $100. If you're meant to be here, this is going to get you through it. And if not, you can just come back home, whatever. So she spotted her $100. I met my wife 1 month later. And we got married. We have 3 kids now, and it's kind of cool. Point of that story is, if Minnie, which $100 isn't even a small act either. $100 is a lot of money to a lot of people. But if she didn't give her that $100 loan, I would have never met my wife. So that one act created all these other things that happened, right? So that's just an example of a small act. I could tell you guys a ton of them. I don't want to make this like super long. So what happened earlier this year in 2024, a buddy of mine, Brett Snodgrass, he wrote a book. I was on his podcast. We were talking about things like this, and he sent me a copy of his book. And a lot of times I got so many books mailed to me and stuff. A lot of times I don't read them, but I did pick up his. And after I was done reading, I'm like, dude, your storytelling was really good. And from my point of view, a lot of you don't know this. About 2 years ago, I started a podcast. My main reason for starting that podcast was I didn't really know how to speak on a camera, right? I think a lot of people can relate to that. So I started practicing, and then I got into storytelling, trying to learn that. And storytelling is really, really hard. So I saw Brett doing this book. I'm like, dude, your stories are really good. I could see like how he connected things and everything. I'm like, how did you do that? And he said he hired a coach. So that one act, which wasn't really even a small act. So I asked Brett, I'm like, hey, how did you do that? And he said, he hired a coach. So I've always felt compelled to write a book. I never knew how, but by seeing that and seeing how he was able to do stories, that compelled me to say, okay, you know what? Hook me up with your coach. And she was expensive, but that triggered the goodness game. Like I've been trying to think, how am I going to do what I want to do here for like 20 years? Then I hook up with her and she's like, okay. And I went through her process, showed me how to like free write, structure what you're thinking, things like that. And I did that. And then she had a 2-part. It's like, okay, I'll help you come up with the structure and then we'll do editing and publishing, things like that. I was going to do the whole part. And then I got through like the free writing and everything. I'm like, okay, I can do the rest on my own, the design, marketing, things like that. But what she did was, it was important because just from Brett hooking me up with her, it allowed me to get over that hump of, okay, how am I going to format the thoughts that I want to get out into a proper format that you can tell the story? So anyway, so that's what I did. That was back at the beginning of this year. I learned how to get all the ideas out of my head. So I'm talking about this goodness game, right? So here's what the goodness game is. First, I wrote it into a book. You can see here, the goodness game, make the world better and feel awesome while doing it, right? So I made it into a game. It's not like a traditional game. It's more like a game of life, like something you do. It's not like a board game, things like that. And the thing is, it's a hard subject to talk about. So I find weird if I talk about helping other people. I think it's weird. I think it's cringy. Nobody wants to brag about the things they do. But I also think that other people, I think everyone wants to make a difference and they don't know how. Well, I don't want to say everybody. I think some people want to make a difference. They either get held up on thinking they have to like create some big organization or mastermind or charitable foundation, things like that. So the first thing here is the game. It's not me. It's not an organization. It's not a group or anything like that. Just more like a game of life. And here, let me read it. Let me show you here too. If you notice here on the cover, normally titles are capital. This one, I chose to make it small. This will give you a little bit of reason, a little bit of thought behind this. So here's what it says. It says, throughout this book, you'll notice the goodness game always remains in lowercase, even when used as a title, even on the cover. This is intentional. The goodness game is not about anything formal. It's not about recognition or focusing on ourselves. It's about helping others selflessly, anonymously, which we'll get into in a little bit, and without exception of return. You're going to feel better. Don't get me wrong, but that's not what it's about. It's about humbly helping others. It's about doing good for doing good's sake. It's about putting goodness out into the world. It's good to do so. Or it's about putting goodness out in the world because it's good to do so. With that in mind, I've kept it lowercase. So it's kind of like a humbling game. It's not like creating a brand that we're going to go promote or creating a group or a business or anything like that. It's just a thing, right? So just wanted to get you in there. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of the framework on what it's about. So let's get into the game. This game is something that you can play with anybody. You can play by yourself. You can play with neighbors. You can play with your kids. You can play with your team. You can play with people you work with, people at church, neighbors, whatever. It's like you can kind of do it any way you want. And let's think about it. It's going to have roles. It's going to have quizzes, tests, things like that, and structure. So think about it kind of like Fight Club. Fight Club's rule number 1 is you don't talk about Fight Club. Rule number 2 is you don't talk about Fight Club. So the goodness game has rules also. Rule number 1 is give without remembering. That means we go out and do things. We don't talk about it. Nobody knows except for us. Rule number 2 is we go out and do things. We know about it. And if we help somebody, they know about it too. So number 1 is basically we go out and do things anonymously. Like the recipient doesn't even know. Rule number 2 is we know and they know, but nobody else knows. We don't go bragging. We don't go talking, things like that. There's a stipulation to those 2 rules. We have rule number 3. You can talk about it if the purpose is to help other people and make a difference. For example, when your neighbors get sick, you can talk about what you're trying to do and organize the neighbors to try to raise money or bring food, things like that, because you're trying to help the bigger cause. You're not bragging about what you're doing. You actually have a purpose and intention to make a difference and help that person. So that's the stipulation that you can involve other people, right? Same thing if you have kids. Like obviously you're going to try to involve them, things like that. So that's the stipulation. But we do not go and brag, screaming from the mountains, hey, you know what? Check out what I did. So those are the rules. Now we have specific things on how to play the game properly. One of them is not everyone's your assignment, which we're going to get into in a minute. But a lot of times when people want to make a difference, they think they need to try to help everybody and they don't know what to do or who to help and they get burnt out, right? So not everybody's your assignment, which we go into in the game. It's basically looking at, okay, what am I built for? What are my skills? Who can I help? And maybe some people, like for me, if somebody has like, say a drug problem or things like that, or maybe a mental problem, I'm not your person because I could actually possibly do more harm than good. My whole job in that situation would be to try to connect them with somebody that is skilled there versus try to get involved in their life because I'm not skilled there. But there are certain areas that I'm really, really strong in. Those are the areas that I do want to help with. So that's one section. We outline out, okay, who's your assignment? How do you know? And what do you do whenever somebody's not your assignment? In addition to that, we have a quiz and a test called the Helper's Heart Test that helps you determine what is your helping style, right? So you can be a financial helper. It's basically same with marketing and same with everything. It's like you can pay with time or you can pay with sweat or you can pay with money, right? So same thing here. It's like, okay, we need to take self inventory here and see, okay, what is my helping style? How can I do things? Because it brings me to the next thing on energy. It's like, okay, if I do the things that give me energy, my bucket's going to be flowing, like overflowing, and it's going to actually help me versus doing things that aren't. For example, raking the neighbor's leaves is not my helping style. My helping style is not manual labor. If somebody needs help, I'll do it, but I'm going to be drained. Versus if somebody needs help creating a business or brainstorming or helping them in that direction and give them motivation and direction, that is, and I'm actually going to have more energy at the end than I do before I start, right? So in this game, we're going to go through that, and then we're going to keep score. It's like, okay, if I do certain things, what happens? We're going to keep score, not in the sense of winning and losing. We're not playing against others, but we are going to keep score, right? So here's what we're looking at on what type of helper are you? Are you a financial helper, empathetic helper, sweat helper? Like, for example, sweat might be someone needs their brakes changed. And you know how to change brakes. That's sweat. Like you're manually doing things or helping somebody move. A connecting helper. Hey, you know what? You got to move. I got a guide. Let me connect you so I know you get a good service. Or a thinking helper. We do this in business a lot. It's like, let me help you out, brainstorm with your scenario, help you learn from my mistakes and just start thinking. So there's different ways. There is a test you can take on goodnessgame.com. The helpers test takes like 2 seconds. You go on, click it. It will give you a scenario with feeding the homeless and have a whole bunch of different choices on different tasks that are available. You choose the one and it will give you an idea what type of helper you might be. Most people are more than one, but it'll also show you maybe the type of helper you're not, so you know how to stay away from that. More important to find out who you're not than what you are, I think, because then you know what to avoid. The game also goes into things like sometimes you need to be the person to accept help. I know me, like it's hard for me to accept help from someone, but you figure if you feel good when you help other people, if you don't let people help you in scenarios there, you're not letting them feel good too. So it goes into that. Like sometimes it's good to accept help and also don't overstep. A lot of times I find myself doing this too because I'm like a helper by nature. That sometimes I'll overstep and like cross the boundary of where I really should be helping. So we talk about things like that also. And then we go into pitfalls. Okay. Sometimes when you're helping, like it's like a double-edged sword. Like, have you helped somebody that has not accepted have you helped somebody in the past push them in a direction, but they didn't take your advice or didn't take your help and they're in the same situation? Sometimes you have to look whenever somebody needs help. It's like, okay, I've given you the tools before, but you didn't use them. Maybe you need to learn it on your own. Like you can't keep pushing yourself on people, things like that. Don't force yourself on people. Like sometimes people aren't ready, so we talk about things like that. And then also avoid tricksters and schemers. Like sometimes when you're trying to help people, you got to watch out for the people that look at mistake kindness as weakness, right? So just keep an eye on that kind of stuff. And we look at the energy audit. So Trevor over at Carrot was on my podcast about a year and a half ago, and he introduced me to the energy audit. I believe Dan Martell was the original person for that. And what it is same in business, we're doing in this game also. It's like, okay, in business, your energy audit, what you want to do is take a piece of paper, down the middle, you put a line. On the left side, you put stuff that gives you energy. On the right side, you put stuff that takes your energy away. For example, like payroll takes my energy away, paying bills, managing. I don't particularly like managing. That takes my energy away. Bookkeeping takes my energy away. But things that give me energy are coming up with ideas, building things, structuring the process, and then passing it to somebody to manage. So I like building things. I like coming up with things, but I don't like the management afterwards. So it's like, it's good for everybody to know what gives them energy and what takes energy away. Same in this game. We're going to do the same thing, but just in general life. Like, do I like cleaning my house? No, that's the thing that takes my energy away. But there are people out there that love cleaning. It's like, okay, so you want to find out what is in your energy style. And we're going to go through that. There's a quiz, or actually not a quiz. It's more like a print off that you can go through this exercise too. You want to find out, okay, what types of things give you energy? What type of thing take energy away? Once you look at that, it's like, okay, I know what type of helping style I am. Maybe I like financially helping, or maybe I like sweat helping, like whatever it is. And then you can look at what gives you energy. With those two things, it's like when things pop up, you're like, okay, you know what? That's my area. That's what I'm built to help for. And when other things pop up, you're like, you know what? That's totally not my area. Somebody else is built for that. That's not my thing, right? For example, babysitting is not my thing, but my wife would be great at it and she would actually enjoy it, you know? So we go through things like that. Okay. So the next thing we look at is we got to create a budget. It's like, okay, I know so many people, especially involved in charity or like helping each other out. I hear from so many people there's burnout. It's like, okay, I got too involved with that. I burnt out. I actually hurt myself because I got drained, things like that. So and burnout's it's good to budget in all areas of your life. But what we're talking about is like, okay, let's budget our money or our time or our energy, right? So we go through that. It's like, and you should do this anyways in life. But say in business, we budget our money, we budget our time, we pick projects, things like that. Well, same thing here in the goodness game. We're going to budget. Do we want to be a financial helper? Okay. How much can we afford every month? Like, let's set that budget so that we know this money's set aside. When something pops up, I have the money. I don't even need to think about it. Versus back in the day, things used to pop up. I would just pull the money out of my checking account and then I'd be stressed all month because I didn't have enough money. So we got that. Same with time. A lot of people burn out. They get involved with too much stuff. So it's like, okay, in the beginning, let's look how much time, let's budget it out, see where we're pulling it from. Same on energy. So we go through that and show you how to plan ahead. Next, we talk about keeping score. But first, I want to talk about KPIs. Okay, so the next thing we do is we're going to keep score. So we're going to talk about stats and KPIs, right? But first, okay, here's a story. My son, Eli, is always talking to my dad. They got this battle going on all the time. It's like, who could beat who? So my dad's always like, obviously he goes with Superman. Superman's like the king of superheroes, right? But my son's always like, well, Super Sonic could beat Superman, and here's why. And he gives all these stats. And the reason I bring this up is I talk to my son. I'm like, how do you know that? He's like, well, I Googled it. I'm like, dude, Google is not a source. So I'm going to give you a couple stats here on like real sources on why this makes a difference and you should even believe it anyways. Okay. So let's talk about the science. Like, let's back it up with some sources, right? So I'm going to read this to you. It says, being kind to somebody releases feel-good chemicals in our brain that helps us feel happier. It's known as a helper's high. And that's according to Explore, the Journal of Science and Healing, right? And they said the concept of the helper's high arose in the 1980s and has been confirmed in various sources since then, right? According to Integrative Psychological Behavior, perpetually kind people have 23% less cortisol. That's the stress hormone, and they age slower than the average population. Kindness boosts our energy levels. There was a study found that people felt stronger and more energetic after helping others. Kindness has been proven to reverse the age or slow the aging process. It's because it produces a chemical called oxytocin, which can reduce free radicals and inflammation from our body, slowing aging at the source. So McCready talked about that back in 1998. WebMD states that oxytocin is the mediator of what has been called the 10-med response, as opposed to fight, flight. So response to the stress. When you're altruistic and touching people in a positive way, lending a helping hand, your oxytocin level goes up, and that relieves your own stress. This happens despite the added stress that sometimes accompanies helping others. Here's another one. Have you noticed when you're kind to someone, you also feel good inside? Acts of kindness are often accompanied by feeling of emotional warmth. Acts of kindness are often accompanied by feelings of emotional warmth, which in turn produces the hormone oxytocin in your body. Oxytocin releases the chemical called nitric oxide, which expands your blood vessels, reduces blood pressure, and protects your heart. That's the Science of Kindness 2022. There's a couple stats, like concrete stats, that can back up what I'm saying, because I just stumbled upon this way back in the day when I was testing something out. But there have been true studies on this too that back up what I'm saying. So for keeping score, here's what I came up with. I came up with an ROI scorecard. So normally ROI is return on investment. We're going to look at this as return on impact. And you can go onto goodnessgame.com. It's a Google sheet. You just click the button, copy it, and then you use it, and it has formulas and things built in there. So basically, it's a scorecard. It's not for scoring against other people. It's more for your own self-reflection. And it shows you things like maybe you did something. You can track, hey, what was my mood before it? What was my mood after it? And it's also going to give you an impact score. So for example, you can say, hey, my mood was a 5 out of 10 before I started, before I did whatever the action was. I bought somebody coffee behind me at Starbucks. So you put in there, it wasn't much effort. You impacted one person, but maybe your mood went from a 5 to a 7. But also you can look and see what's your ROI. It's like, okay, you helped one person, took a little bit of effort, and it will give you a number. Or what if you did something big? It's like, you know what? My neighbor was sick. I organized a big fundraiser that involved 100 people, and it took like a month long or 2 months. You can put things like that in there too. And it's basically kind of a scorecard for yourself to see the things you do. Does it help you? Does it help others? What kind of impact? Things like that, right? Here's one of the cool things and not cool things as well. The things you do, you're probably not going to see a lot of the impact in the ripple effect. So it's nice to be able to document on your side how you feel and what you think. For example, if you're helping people and the recipient doesn't even know that you help them, you don't get to see the end result a lot of times. Like, for example, I know somebody that helps the homeless, right? And they help the homeless. They go feed them every Sunday, and they organize like 100 people, but they have people anonymously on the side help with needs. So for example, one week they needed help. There was a mother that just got an apartment, didn't have any beds. So they said, hey, we need beds, we need mattresses, things like that. So somebody donated the mattresses and beds to them, but the person that donated, number one, doesn't get to see the person, doesn't even know where they went. So all they get to do is imagine, okay, I helped somebody. I don't know what impact it made in their life. I didn't get to see the reaction from them. So that's kind of the fun thing. You get to imagine what happens, but you also get to keep score for yourself too, because a lot of times you don't get to see. Like the lady that picked me up in Florida, she doesn't know what impact that one weekend made. Maybe it wasn't even a weekend, might have been weekdays. I don't know, but she doesn't know what that did in my life, right? And one other thing I want to talk about here too is it's about win-win situations. So we help other people, they win. We also get to feel better, so we win. So it's a true win-win situation. There's some people out there that say, hey, you know what? Giving and being nice has to be completely pure. If you feel good about it or something, then it's not pure. I think that's silly. I think win-win situations are great. So just what I believe, right? So the Goodness Game is available on Amazon and Audible. So you can grab a copy of this, and it has everything way more detailed out than I'm talking about here. I just wanted to give everybody an overview on what I was talking about here and what I've been working on. Basically, let's go back through this. So we got step one, determine what's your helper style. We want to stay like, we know this is our area. This is where we play. Like, for example, if I'm a real estate investor, I'm not doing a whole bunch of MLS stuff and trying to get buyers that want MLS listings. I'm staying in my lane on here. I do rental properties. I know my lane in real estate is I buy in a specific area and I do the BRRRR method. I don't do wholesaling. I don't do flipping. Same thing here. We're going to want to pick our lane. Like, what's our lane? Where do we help? And the helper's heart test and the energy audit are going to show us that. Not everybody's your helping style. Create your budget. And then basically it's like push the snowball down the hill. Like, push it down. You do something small. And if you do 100 things, one of them's going to make an impact, maybe 1,000. I don't know what the number is, but one of them's going to make an impact and it's going to compound. So I always look at it as it's like, I'm just going to take a whole bunch of shots and see what happens, right? So anyways, also, if you want a copy of the digital version of the book, just shoot me an email, brian@motivated-leads.com. Just shoot me an email. I'll get you a copy at no charge. Like, I'll send you the PDF. We're going to be promoting it on Amazon and Audible, like I said before. If you want the hard copy or Audible version, I did not do the Audible version. I hired somebody to do that, just so you know, it's not my voice. But yeah, you can also check it out on Amazon and Audible. But if you want a free copy, just shoot me an email. I'll send it over to you, no charge at all. But anyway, hey, I wanted to thank everybody for listening. This is a little bit of a different episode than we normally do. But thanks for listening. Again, the Goodness Game right there. Get out there, crush it, close some deals, and shoot me an email let me know what your thoughts are. See you guys.